Welcome to Sightlines. I'm Dr. Hunter Cherwick, Vice President of Clinical Services for Orbis International. In this series, we're looking at how the fight against global blindness has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the innovations that are making it possible to safely deliver urgent, sight-saving care in the midst of it all, and what that work might look like going forward as we prepare for the new normal. As we've been talking with guests about that very big topic, I noticed another theme that kept coming up.
We very often talk about ourselves as a family.
We work as a team and we're a family.
The Orbis family.
The Orbis family.
It's true. We really are a family at Orbis, and that family includes our staff in the air and on the ground.
It really does feel like a family when we're together, even when we're apart.
Our volunteers.
We all are driven by the same thing, and we all share the same values.
Our partners.
We love to work with Orbis as our partner. So thank you for being there.
Our generous donors.
That's an important factor because they're making a difference in the world. They're allowing us to operate.
The doctors, nurses, and other workers we train.
You know how much I love Orbis.
The children and adults we treat.
Flying Eye Hospital came to Mongolia and changed my life forever.
And everyone who believes that nobody in the world, no baby, no child, no adult, should have to live a life of blindness simply because they were born in a place where they cannot access eye care. Right now, there are hundreds of millions of people living that reality. They are blind or visually impaired, and they don't have to be. The good news is global blindness has decreased in recent years. The bad news is, despite all the progress we've made, the problem is projected to get worse. Because of population growth, aging, and an increase in diabetes, experts say that global blindness is on track to triple by the year 2050 unless we act now. It is an enormous problem, but it's a solvable problem, even now. And the local teams and partners we work with around the world are so committed to solving it in their own communities.
Our staffs and partner staff are expected to travel for about more than 3 to 4 hours on foot to travel to the village whenever it's required. We have a very dedicated staff, not only our staff, but the partner staffs and the administrative and the political leaders of the local regions are very committed to support our program.
When you go someplace and you see how busy these clinics are, whether it's in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and there are 100 patients being seen that day, and yet you'd think, well, they're just going to go into survival mode and get through everyone and go home and come back and do it again. But you see people who are willing to do that kind of volume and then sit down at night and send in a consult or do a course on CyberSight. They're willing to do that on top of what they just did all day long. How can you not support someone who wants to help themselves? And when you see people do that, that gives a great sense of joy.
That is why the entire Orbis family is so determined to forge ahead, safely of course, despite the pandemic. In this episode, we'll spend some time with two cherished members of the Orbis family. They each perform very different roles, but they share a vision of a world free from avoidable blindness. First, Nurse Sandy Burnett. Sandy has been with us for decades, initially as a staff nurse on the Flying Eye Hospital, and then as a volunteer. Then, Captain Cheryl Pitzer. Cheryl is a volunteer pilot of the Flying Eye Hospital. She too has been with us for many years. She made Orbis history as part of the plane's first ever all-woman flight crew. It is my pleasure to welcome each of them to Sightlines, starting with Sandy. Here's our conversation. One of my favorite people in the Orbis family is joining us. Nurse Sandy, as she likes to be called, is really the heartbeat of Orbis and all that we do. She's been on all 3 generations of the Flying Eye Hospital. So you're not only going to see the best of Orbis and what we do, but also hear about our history and some of amazing stories about her journey with Orbis from the very beginning years. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for being here. Where are you right now? And tell us how you're doing during this COVID crisis.
Well, I'm at home in Gainesville, Florida,
I work at UF Health, which is also known as Shands Hospital in the recovery pre-op area. And well, we're all just moving forward. There was a big shutdown of outpatient surgery in March, April, May, so I didn't have to work. That's fine. I work part-time. But now I'm back to working. I'm kicking it up to a second day, 2 days a week. And fortunately, all patients are pre-checked for COVID and then are asked for a 2-day isolation before coming in for surgery. So, I mean, we're all wearing masks, and if there was someone positive, we have the protective gear.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you have an amazing story of how you first heard about and came to Orbis. Maybe you can talk about how Orbis came into your life and how you became part of the Orbis family the first go around as a staff.
That was really fun. I was in my first year at working at Bascom Palmer. I've been in medical sales, and I had moved to Spain to learn Spanish because I grew up there and didn't know that there was another kind of Spanish spoken in the world. So I went to Spain, immersed myself, and I was not going to do medical sales. So I thought I'll go to the eye hospital at the University of Miami. And there is where I met Jeffrey Holland, a former medical director on the Orbis DC-8, who was doing a fellowship in cornea, and he talked about this airplane that flies around the world training people to do better eye surgeries. And I thought, that's the ticket for me. I was able to get on board with Orbis in 1990 and flew to Sudan with the aircraft out of Germany when the Berlin Wall was coming down. And that began my love affair and adventures with Orbis and a whole new family of friends around the world, particularly when I am working as a nurse and sharing the skills I have with fellow nurses around the world. My skills may not serve them as well, but it introduces them to a manner of communicating and teaching everyone and not waiting till surgery is done. At the beginning of getting ready in the pre-op area, you can talk a little bit about some of the adjustments that might have to be made for having an eye bandaged, or how to use the eye drops, and maybe have them do a hands-on training at that moment. Wash your hands, and here, let's put the eye drop in, blah. So that has been that affair, and then the opportunity to go to new places and then take time off before coming home and traveling around a bit has been a real nice mix of those skills and opportunity.
Yeah, I would say if I was asked to describe you, I would say you're a global citizen with an incredible amount of energy, who has an incredible gift of communication, who just happens to be a nurse. How long did you stay on the Orbis plane as a staff member? And then how did you get re-engaged as a volunteer faculty member? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well.
Well, I finished in April of 1993 after 2.5 years roughly on the DC-8. And it was time, and I had a splendid job to return to at Bascom Palmer Eye Institute in the oculoplastics department. And somewhere along that time, I think Orbis was developing a nursing education program that offered me the opportunity to go to Lima, Peru. And so that was the opportunity to deliver lectures in Spanish and show that I had those skills to afford sending me elsewhere to do training programs. Guyana was another place that I went, and Suriname and Guatemala, to do specifically nurse training programs and or help a visiting ophthalmologist do eye cases. And with that, I think there was a development in the role of how to include volunteer nurses who have on the aircraft at the same time, who had been staff or else were otherwise exceptionally skilled, to draw from a wider pool of nurses and afford a quality of service that couldn't be beat.
Yeah, and I think for me, the surgical team is always focused on the procedure. You have the gift, and you're really focused on the patient, the family, and that whole pathway. Do they understand where to go to the next day? How to put in the drops? Show me how to put in the drops. Which one do you put in the morning? Which one do you put at night? So really, I always tell people that the outcome of a surgery is also dependent on the patient, not just the surgeon. And you're the one that really prepares the patient and the family. It takes a village to give a child their sight back. And I think you are really kind of the village leader. You're the team leader on that. Well, you know, obviously we talked about your global citizenship, but you seem to have a very special connection with Latin America and the Caribbean.
Well, I think one of the first highlights with the DC-8 was going to Cuba. Having grown up in Miami from the mid-'60s, and with all the Cubans that have moved there, it was so interesting to go to that country and to see for myself the beauty of Havana and the people and observe the different system of ophthalmology there. They were using the Russian Fyodorov Ford Motor Company assembly line, where one ophthalmologist blocks the eye, another ophthalmologist takes out the cataract, and then the patient moves on a conveyor belt to the next ophthalmologist to have the cataract or the IOL placed, and then a fourth one closes the eye. It was interesting to be back there maybe 10 years later, and that system was no longer being used. The other memorable experience was in Peru. And it was just a couple of years ago that I was there that a 32-year young man came on board to have a cornea transplant. He had been mugged, and so his intraocular lens had been dislocated, and his cornea needed to be replaced. And as his mother, who was with him, said in Spanish, "This is his la segunda vez." And I go, "Really? And when was the first?" And she said 1991. And I'm like, "Really?" And she said, "I have photos." And when she pulled out the photos, there I was with long blonde hair. Dr. Frankie, who was from England, was the anesthesiologist. And there standing was a 7-year-old with a metal fox shield over his eye. And now here, fast forward 27 years, is this same youngster. Well, I was just so momentous. She gave me such a bear hug of thank you, appreciation, and love, that it was just the stars and the planets were all aligned at that moment. And I played for him, well, I can't remember the song right now, but I got through it, and on my ukulele here, "Stars shining bright above you, dream a little dream." That was it. So
that's awesome.
Dose.
So you treated this young man at the age of 7, and you did a very successful cataract and corneal procedure and was part of the team that helped him get his sight back at 7. And then all these years later, he unfortunately had an assault and the eye was injured again. And just by happenstance, the Orbis plane was there to save the day, and you were on board to not only help him, but help the mom. Because I remember this patient, I was on the plane at that time. She was very worried about her son.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And maybe you could say, what did that young boy at 7, what did he go on to do with his vision? And what did you find out about his life in the years after the DC-8 took off?
Yeah, well, other than having successfully kept his donated cornea and gone on to college and graduated with a degree in civil engineering, I extended an invitation, come to Florida. I'm not far from Disney World, and that's yet to happen. But you never know these days. And so it was just a wonderful experience to have that kind of connection from 27 years prior.
Well, I could think of no better person to be your cultural attaché for Disney World than you. Taking someone to the world's happiest place with the world's happiest person, I think that would be pretty spectacular. So obviously you've been part of the Orbis family for decades now. Where is the magic? What makes Orbis so special, and what makes it so special to you?
Well, I think it's just the opportunity to mix myself with like-minded people to teach and benefit folks who have improved vision, as well as the people from around the world who can do better nursing and or anesthesia. or be a kinder physician, or be a nurse who knows how to suggest to a doctor, let's not do it this way, let's try it this way. And there's a way to do that. And so that's the opportunity to do that and share skills I have. It's a great pleasure, and I enjoy doing it and look forward to returning when we can.
And why is blindness, so how has that impacted you? Like, you've seen blindness now all over the world, in every corner of the world. Why is that such a special disease, a special thing to treat and give someone the gift of sight?
I think it back to not so much that we're trying to give someone 20/20 vision. It's the ability to function and regain some control over their lives, that without the vision, they're not a useful participant in the village. They can't watch the cattle. They can't go out to the well to get water. They may not marry. And helping people to see is a prime motivator. I don't want to give up my other senses, but boy, if I don't have one useful eye, you're sunk. And if you can have it surgically repaired, so now you have two functioning eyes, all the better. And having trained ophthalmologists and nurses around the world and other ophthalmic technician healthcare givers is the name of the game.
Kind of like you, I've bounced on and off the Orbis plane for, the better part of 15 years. And people ask me, the faces and the names change, but what is consistent? And I always joke and I say it's the same circus, different clowns. That it's this unbelievable carefree spirit, people who really want an adventure. They want something that's going to change their life and the lives of others. Tell me what keeps drawing you back. What is that energy? What is that magic that I've only seen on the Orbis Flying Eye Hospital?
Yeah.
What is that magic for you?
The magic is seeing a light bulb go off in their head. When you just see a spark in someone's eyes, like they get it. You've been given the boost of confidence to say, no, doctor, you keep your hands, you hold the instrument up and I'll put the new instrument there, or something of that kind. And I guess just giving them an opportunity that they wouldn't have if Orbis hadn't come around to share the repertoire of skills that we all, that the clowns that we bring to the circus share. So that's what I like to share, is with doctors, ophthalmologists around the world, that build up your nurses and make them more skillful with your knowledge, and your patients will see the unity and the commitment to care that comes more holistically. I don't really like that word, but when they see a strong nurse with the doctor and a strong ophthalmic technician supported by the ophthalmologist, it just creates the best propaganda that you want to go there and have your eye surgery, because these people have their act together and they're using and teaching.
I've seen you use this guy many, many times on Orbis programs. Can you tell us who this guy is and all the different ways and all the different countries you've used this guy?
Well, that's Seymour the bear, and he is gifted to the pediatric patient of all ages. If that reaches someone as an adult, then that's fine too. But it's a way of sharing the eye care that we'll be doing, in terms of perhaps putting an IV in the arm, putting a bandage on the arm, and also just putting a patch or a plastic eye shield over the eye to help them understand that is how they will wake up after surgery, and that this is your buddy. This is who's going to help you and be right with you along for the ride, and also to go home with you. So for children, that's a great way to have something they can throw it, they can hug it, and it's comforting.
Yeah, and I've seen you use it as a teaching aid, where you'll actually put a little patch. If the child's having surgery on the right eye, you'll put a patch on Seymour's right eye, and you tell them that when you wake up, your eye's going to be patched, and don't take off the patch. See, Seymour leaves the patch on. I've seen you use it not just as a comfort aid, but a teaching aid. I am betting you have given more bears around the world than pretty much anybody. You're like Santa Claus, except you don't use reindeer, you use a flying eye hospital.
Right, thank you. Yes, I like that.
And one of the things that sometimes people don't realize is we will fly one of our staff doctors back 6 to 8 weeks after the program on our surgical case review. They will fly back commercially, not on the Orbis plane, and will see every single patient that we operated on. Well, especially on the pediatric weeks, the entire waiting room at the hospital will have kids holding on to this bear, and they probably have not let go of that thing for the 6 weeks, because that's been the best toy or their best friend, as they both, the bear and the patient, have recovered from eye surgery.
And that's important. That's just something that relates to them, that's on their level. And when you connect, you just got to cement it and go with it. So I'd say use everything that you've got, including lollipops and, crackers after surgery or so. But Mr. Seymour is very, very helpful.
Well, Omega is the one who actually donates these. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. And I've seen cargo. We fill up the cargo whenever we do a restock. We have an entire shelf that are vacuum sealed teddy bears. So these bears can squish down, and as soon as you cut them open, these things pop out. It's hilarious.
It is.
Well, again, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. You've already put a smile on my face. It was a long week, and it ended with an exclamation point with you. So thank you for being you. That was Sandy Burnett, who reminded us of yet another beloved member of the Orbis family, Seymour the teddy bear. Next up, Captain Cheryl Pitzer, a FedEx pilot who volunteers her time to help us take the Flying Eye Hospital on its sight-saving missions around the world. Here's my conversation with Cheryl. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us. Where are you right now in the world?
Well, thanks for having me. And right now I am in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's cold and rainy.
Okay, well, I appreciate you making the time. I know, as always, we're working across time zones at Orbis, and certainly we appreciate all that you and FedEx are doing to keep things going now during the COVID crisis. I think you have one of the more interesting backgrounds of all the FedEx pilots I've gotten to know over the years. Maybe you could tell us about how you got started in aviation and how you've come up through the ranks in FedEx.
Sure. Well, when I was in college, I sold spring break trips. And by doing that, I was able to take free spring break trips and take my friends on free spring break trips. And so when I got out of college, my degree was in marketing and advertising. And I wanted to go on vacation for free for the rest of my life. So I started looking at airlines, and the economy was not great at the time, but Continental Airlines was hiring flight attendants, and I thought, what a great way to get my foot in the door. And so that's what I did. I was a flight attendant for 4 years, and during that time I was constantly in the cockpit, asking questions and learning about the process to become a pilot. I knew I loved the lifestyle, so I started taking flying lessons and built my time, and had various flying jobs until here I am at FedEx. And next month actually is my 25th anniversary at FedEx. So.
Well, that's fantastic. And I will say it's an absolute pleasure working with you. You are one of the most high energy people, and I always feel great when you're on board. Things just go smoothly when Cheryl's involved. And certainly all of us want to take a moment and thank you and your husband, Pete, who also volunteers as a pilot for Orbis. I think you two are the first husband and wife duo that's ever flown Orbis One. So you have a lot of honors in your journey as a pilot.
Clear to land runway 21.
Clear to land runway 21, Orbis One.
One of the things I definitely wanted to ask you was, when did you first hear about Orbis, and how did you first become involved?
I think the first time I ever heard about Orbis was at Oshkosh, probably 10, 15 years ago. Oshkosh is a major air show, and my husband and I were there, and I'd seen the airplane. I'd heard the name before, but I didn't know much about it. And we stopped and saw the airplane, and I just thought it was amazing. And at that time, FedEx and United pilots were combining the duties of operating the airplane. And then I knew FedEx had donated the new MD-10 aircraft to Orbis, and I knew that they would need some more help with the MD-10 in particular, because it's a unique aircraft that only FedEx operates. So I contacted the chief pilot of Orbis, Gary Dyson, and offered to help out. I was an instructor and an evaluator at FedEx at the time on that aircraft, and I just told him if he needed help training the pilots that I'd be happy to jump in. And he actually ended up inviting me to join the pilot cadre for Orbis, which is a huge honor. It's really, there's a long line of people that want to do it because Orbis does such great work, really incredible. So it's very humbling.
Obviously, you all are just a top-notch crew. One of the things that I always feel very confident in, you all in the front of that plane, just like our volunteer faculty, are kind of the top of your field and literally have decades of flying and training experience. It's not unusual when we sit there and listen to you all talking and we ask, well, sometimes we'll have a century of aviation experience just in that one cockpit. So it really is fun working with you all and kind of learning about aviation. One of the things, obviously, you love travel. You said that's one of the reasons why you got involved with aviation to begin with, was not only the challenge, but the lifestyle. Maybe you can tell us where some of the most memorable experiences you've had with Orbis have taken place and what those moments have meant to you as both a pilot and a person.
Well, flying with Orbis is a much bigger challenge in a good way than flying with FedEx. FedEx, we have normal routes and we do fly all over the globe. We have scheduled service to pretty much everywhere, including Africa now, which is new for us. And so you have people that help you along the way. You have staff, the ground support's already there. People follow our flight plans for us. They order our fuel. You know, we as pilots are able to just concentrate on just flying the airplane at the scheduled time. With Orbis, we're going to places that we don't have all the services that we're used to. We do a lot of the flight planning ourselves. We have a lot more input into that, a lot more of the decision making. And Orbis does a fantastic job of looking ahead at where we're going to go, and they have all the appropriate information that we need for us to make those decisions and decide the best times to fly and the winds and the weather and whatever else may be needed. But we're just much more involved into a lot more remote places with Orbis. But that's what I like about it. That's what makes it fun. One challenging place that sticks out in my experience was Mongolia. And you can only go in one way and out the same way because of the terrain, and the weather has to be just perfect and the winds have to be just perfect. So it takes a team effort to have the hospital packed up and everybody ready to go at a moment's notice when conditions are exactly right. And like I said, we're very heavy, so the temperatures have to be a certain way to get the heavy aircraft off that runway safely. So it's fun.
Well, you all make it look easy, and I think that's what any expert does, is take a challenging situation, keep their composure, execute, and really, to the outside observer, make it look easy. I can tell you, I was on that flight, and you all made it look like it was just another day in the office. So, hats off to you. And again, that speaks to your training and how you all have trust as a team in that cockpit. What about from a personal standpoint? What did you see on that program? What do you see on Orbis programs that really kind of touch you as a human being and connect you to our mission?
That was one of the first times I got to see very much. A lot of times as the pilots, we move the airplane to its destination and then get on a passenger airline and go home to go back to work. So Mongolia is one of the times that I actually got to meet a few of the people. And in fact, one was Bolgan, who is now an ambassador for Orbis. And it was so interesting to meet her because she was so thankful and really, really wanted to give back. And I think that speaks volumes to what Orbis does. And it's really amazing. And it's amazing to get to know the people and hear about their country and what's really going on and not what you see in the news. So that's some of my favorite parts.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the things people don't realize as FedEx, you're delivering gifts, for the holidays, birthday gifts, but the most important gift that I see FedEx delivering is the gift of sight. Whether it's delivering corneas for transplantation, or if it's delivering the supplies to load up Orbis One, or bringing the Flying Eye Hospital into these countries safely and letting us set up and do our training and our patient care programs. So again, to me, I love it when the pilots can stay and be part of the power and get to know the patients that all the good work that you do to support our mission brings. So again, just a huge thank you.
Thanks. Well, and it's funny. So at FedEx, I know I have a plane full of stuff. I don't necessarily know what's back there. 99% of the time, I have no idea what's back there or how important it is to the people that are receiving those packages. But with Orbis, I do know. And I think that's part of the reason I find it so rewarding. Even if I'm not staying after delivering the airplane to see the actual surgeries or meet the patients, I know what I've delivered to them. And that's what's so rewarding about it.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about your incredible accomplishments in aviation. And, people may not know that Orbis took the first flight in 1982 in a DC-8 aircraft. And now we're on our third generation aircraft, an MD-10. But you and your coworker and friend and fellow co-pilot, Cindy Berwin, actually made Orbis history when you flew the first unmanned flight and we had an all-female pilot crew. And I remember we were talking with you and you said, for me, it was just another flight. The strange thing is that we're still talking about things like this. Maybe you could expand upon that and talk about what you think about, being the first all-female crew to fly Orbis 1.
Well, Cindy and I have flown many times at FedEx, and I think that's where my comment came from, that it just seemed like a normal day to me. It's interesting, especially now that, diversity and inclusivity is such a big topic. We don't have very many female pilots. I think only 4% maybe in the airline world are pilots. At FedEx, we have a little over 200 female pilots, and I think only 77 captains. So we are a minority when you look at it that way. And maybe it's just because I have no other perspective than being a female pilot. It doesn't seem strange to me. And it does seem strange when we make a big deal about the first female crew at Orbis. To Cindy and I think it didn't really seem that strange.
Well, I can tell you, for those who don't know, and she's one of the beating hearts of the Orbis aircraft, our chief of aircraft maintenance and the mechanic who keeps the plane running every day when it's in hospital mode is Val Suberg. And if you go down to the second level of the plane where all the aircraft maintenance and all of the aircraft supplies are kept, in her station, her workstation, she has a photo of you all in the cockpit and she's doing a selfie, and that is her favorite photo in the whole airplane. So I can assure you, while it may be strange that we're talking about this as first for women pilots, I can tell you that was a big deal for Val, and she loves being part of that, where she also is leading an aircraft team and doing a great job of it.
I'm glad you brought her up because she's really, really special. And what's interesting is there are far fewer female aircraft mechanics than there are pilots. So for me, I love seeing her as part of Orbis and leading that team, because it is that really is unusual. And she really, she knows her stuff and does a great job. And every time I step on that airplane, I know everything is going to be perfect.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes Orbis so exciting, is that you're going to places that probably you would not sometimes always go, and you're bringing something very special with you. So, whenever we have children come on the plane, either as patients or during Goodwill tours or during air shows, like how you got introduced to Orbis, I always ask children, do you want to be a doctor or a pilot when you grow up? And sadly, 90% say pilot. What is it about aviation? How can I get these children to come over to the medical side and be part of Team Hunter? How can I do that?
Truthfully, I think it's because people don't understand what you do as well as they understand what a pilot is. My very best friend from college is in sales, and we used to be in IT sales, which, if we were out and we'd meet people out somewhere and they'd say, what do you do? And she'd say, well, I'm in such and such sales about such and such. And they'd kind of go, oh, and they'd look at me and say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, well, I'm a pilot. And it's like, oh, I was on this airplane one time, or my uncle was a pilot. But, and she would get so frustrated with that. But it was really more because people know what a pilot does.
I would say almost everyone, even today, I will be sometimes watching Orbis take off or land when I'm ahead of the plane on a planning visit. And I can tell you, I still feel like a 6-year-old. There's something magical about flight. When you meet a pediatric patient and see the transformative journey they've had, how does that make you feel when you see a kid walking off Orbis 1 and they have their sight back?
Speechless, literally speechless. I couldn't do what I do without my sight. You as a surgeon couldn't do what you do without your sight. I recently took my mother to get her cataracts done, and it was no big deal. We made an appointment, we went to the doctor, boom, she's done and she can see. And that's not true all over the world, and especially with the children, it's just, it's hard to fathom that you can't just do this all over the world. You guys make it look easy. I watch the surgeries on the big screen in the airplane, and it's like, oh yeah, I do this and I do that, and boom, they sewn up and off they go, and they can see. It looks easy. So I was going to think, well, why do we even need Orbis? Why isn't this easy? No. So it's funny, kind of back to what you asked a few minutes ago, that my very first Orbis trip, I was moving the airplane out of Vietnam. And so for anybody that hasn't been on one of these trips, it takes a lot of time to pack up the hospital and get it all secure so the airplane can move it. And so you and your staff and everybody gets that done. And then the surgeons go home, and a lot of the hospital staff go home. A lot of the Orbis staff goes home. And then we come in and just move the airplane. And so my very first trip moving the airplane out of Vietnam, we go to leave, and the health ministry wanted to thank us. Well, they wanted to thank you, but we were the only ones there. So they pull us into a room, and I was with Val, and they're giving big speeches, and they're presenting us with flowers, and they're very thankful for Orbis and everything that Orbis does, even outside of the aircraft. And I'm kind of standing there, and Val pushes me in the back, and she's like, that's you're representing Orbis. And I'm kind of like standing there like, thanks. I didn't want to say all I do is move the airplane. The doctors do all the magic. But it was interesting because it was unexpected.
I'm gonna correct you for the first time in this interview and conversation. You are part of the Orbis team, and I do want you to use the we. And to me, that's what's magical about Orbis, is taking people from 14 different countries, all 6 continents, taking people from totally different backgrounds in aviation, engineering, and medicine, and making this unbelievable team. And to me, one of the best things about Orbis is we're the best example of functional diplomacy I've ever seen, where people from all different walks of life, all different parts of the world, all different training and backgrounds, we come together and we do one thing, and we do it really well. So definitely, I love the fact you're representing Orbis. Not, for me, you're this incredible talent and ball of energy, but also that they see that Orbis is not just eye doctors. It takes a village to give a child their sight back. And for Orbis, that involves aviation and special pilots like you.
Yeah. That trip was interesting also because they had to bring customs people down, because that wasn't a normal airport that had customs. And so they brought them down so we could all get out. And back to, you talk about pilots, all of the people wanted to take pictures with us. And that was really fun. And you hope that maybe somebody says, oh, girls can be pilots. And when we went to file the flight plan with the aviation headquarters there, the woman who was helping us, her mother had been helped by Orbis the previous visit several years earlier, and she was so thankful. And we got to bring her out and show her the airplane, and it was, you just never know who you're going to touch, who you're talking to. So.
No, that's very true. And one of the things I've learned, like you were talking about your mother's experience, and I'm so glad she's doing well after cataract surgery. Everyone in one way or another is touched by visual impairment, whether it's having a child need glasses, needing cheaters to read the menu at a restaurant, having a loved one, a grandmother, a parent need cataract surgery. I do think that vision connects us all. And certainly giving someone that sight back is something that they'll always remember. And we've had patients come back and know that Orbis is in town 20 and 30 years later just to thank us because they heard Orbis was back in that hospital or back at that airport. So I will tell you, you've left a mark on literally hundreds of people for the rest of their lives, either through surgery or meeting with them or giving them a tour on the plane. And to me, that's something I always love about Orbis is we're not only an aspirational organization, we're an inspirational organization as well.
It was amazing to watch the whole Orbis team when we land and everybody jumps into action to unpack, and it's everybody from the surgeons to the mechanics to everybody, and everybody just jumps in, and you can tell everybody loves what they're doing. It's, you say that I bring an energy, but the reality is I'm feeding off of the energy of everyone else. And it feels great.
I want to thank you. You are just so awesome, and not just as a friend and as a colleague, but just as a person and as a pilot. And thank you for all of the Orbis team for getting us to where we need to be.
Well, right back at you, Hunter. I'm amazed by what you all do.
That was Captain Cheryl Pitzer. I want to thank both Captain Pitzer and Sandy Burnett for joining me on Sightlines, and of course for being part of the Orbis family. I want to thank you for being a part of the Orbis family too. It's been such a pleasure putting these episodes together for you. At a time when we've all had to stay apart, these Sightlines conversations gave us an opportunity to connect and to reminisce. Thank you for joining me for Sightlines. While this is our last episode of this season, you can find any episodes you've missed on our YouTube page or in our podcast feed. We've loved creating this series and hope to be back in the future with new episodes. If you'd like to learn more about Orbis and the Flying Eye Hospital, please visit us at orbis.org. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch each episode and check out many other videos about our work around the globe. If you're listening to the podcast version of the show, please hit subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. And if you're listening in an Apple podcast, please consider rating or reviewing the show. It really does help others learn about us, about Orbis, and our sight-saving mission. Until next time.